Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Kids Cancer Therapy Toolbox podcast. Our guest today is Heather, who's the mom of Axel and Maverick. So, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Heather Heineke, and yes, I actually have three boys. My oldest is 24, so he's kind of out on his own. And then I have Maverick, who is just turned 11, and Axel, who is forever 5.
Great. So, could you tell us more about Axel?
Yeah, so Axel was just a burst of energy. And I know we'll talk about his cancer journey in a second here. I think if you knew Axel, you never would have even guessed that he had cancer if you didn't see his little bald head. He had so much energy, much more energy than me on most days. So he loved to run and play and video games with his brother and his cousins, and loved to travel. And couple interesting things about him: he loved squirrels, like was obsessed with squirrels, which is interesting because we live in Phoenix, and there are no squirrels in Phoenix, so it's not like he saw squirrels all the time, but he was obsessed with squirrels. And so yeah, so just a little fun fact about him.
Yeah. Where do you think he got all of his energy from?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Probably from being a 5-year-old boy. Well, he had just turned 5, and so most of the time while he had cancer, he was 4. And yeah, I don't know. Well, he called his chemo his superhero power juice, and so to him, it was not something bad. It kind of gave him that energy and the things that he needed. So he definitely, that mind body connection, he took that for what it was worth, for sure.
Right. So, now would you like to talk more about the cancer journey?
Sure, sure. So Axel was diagnosed with alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a very rare cancer, a couple weeks before he turned 4. And we were selected for a clinical trial. And overall, that clinical trial went great. For the most part, everything went as planned. We finished his course of treatment, and in January of 2024, he was in remission. And in March, so once he was in remission, there was still like a maintenance phase that we did. And so then in March, we found a little lump on his chest, and found out that the cancer was back. However, what we didn't know is that it had actually spread to his brain and his spine. And so the one spot that we found actually ended up being having spread to his brain and his spine. And so he had to go in for emergency surgery on both his brain and his spine. And where they thought that they got it all out, I think we went back maybe 6 weeks later for more scans. And at that point, it had spread everywhere. I think that's really when we realized just how, I guess I was going to say, how not far um, childhood cancer research and what is available for kids with cancer has come. So when Axel was first diagnosed and we were put on this protocol, at the time, right, you're just kind of inundated in trying to, learning that your child has cancer and then trying to understand what's happening and how it all works. It was very overwhelming. And then once it spread and we had to look at other treatment options, that's when you really realize that there aren't any. And so my background, I actually went to school for pre-med. Didn't go that direction in the end, but I did work at cancer research institute after college. So I knew the importance of research. And when I was just hearing about the treatments that were available and, that they had been designed back in the 1980s and nothing new had happened since then, that's when and the options that we had for him were really just kind of trial and error. And we don't know if this will work and maybe it will. And none of them worked very good or they had a lot of side effects was really when, that I really started to realize that a lot more has to go into research. And then Axel became our angel on July 9th, 2024. Yeah.
How did you find support during that time?
Yeah. So that was really, I think the amazing part, our family and friends really rallied behind us. And like within a matter of days, we called ourselves Axel's Army. And so the group grew bigger and bigger, of course, family, close friends, work colleagues. And then it grew to people we didn't even know. And they really became such a big support for us, providing meals, just seeing how they could help, taking things off our plate, when we had to miss things, work and things like that, helping with Maverick. And so that's where we found a lot of support. We also found a lot of support with the great nonprofits that are in Arizona and nationally that were just such a blessing to us when we needed it most. And I think that's what led me, and I don't know when you want me to share on that, but we just finished finalizing or launching our nonprofit for Axel. And I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to, because just realizing the support and blessing that they were when we really needed them the most.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about the nonprofit in a bit, but
Yeah.
how do you find ways to maintain hope?
Oh, so I think my definition of hope has definitely changed. When Axel was first diagnosed, I had a lot of hope that, the treatment would work, that even when it spread to his brain and his spine, that, we'd be able to take care of it. And so my journey with hope changed. And then when he died, um, it was hard at first, to kind of find that because the one thing that I had wanted and had hoped for hadn't happened. And yet I've always been someone who's tried to look on that bright side and to have hope. And so it took some time and to kind of find hope. And sometimes it's for really little things, right? I try to find hope for things for me and for my, for Maverick and Caden and just the things that I'm doing. And so, but I've also had to learn to give myself grace with that. Some days I don't have it, and that's okay. And some days I do, and I just push forward as best as I can. Um, one of the things that I'm, most excited about is the nonprofit that we're doing. I think there has a lot of hope in there with the things that we're doing. And it may not be hope in the way that I wanted things to end, but I hope that that could be different for another family.
Yeah, I love that. So, how has your perspective on childhood cancer changed? And did it influence the way you approach your work career-wise?
Yeah. So, before actually, it was really interesting. When I was pre med in college, I actually wanted to go into pediatric oncology. So I think there's always been kind of that draw to there. But to be honest, I didn't really know a lot about it until Axel was diagnosed. I remember a doctor saying to me when we found out that, because they went back and forth on if it was rhabdomyosarcoma or lymphoma. And I remember a doctor saying to me, once we found out it was a sarcoma, oh, I bet you wish it would have been a lymphoma. And in my mind, I thought, okay, have no idea the difference between those two, you know, until you're apart, until you're pulled into this world. I think I thought all childhood cancer was the same, right? Like you just aren't thinking about it. And so I think having gone through it now, you know, as I had mentioned earlier, I truly see the need for research. I see the need for advocacy. And so, you know, having been on the other side of it and being able to see what there is and what there isn't, I see all those little pieces that are missing, that kind of pushes me to push for more research and more advocacy and things like that. Um, as far as my career goes, so right now I work on the insurance side of things, and so I think for me, as far as what it's done, I think not so much for my job itself. I think what the journey taught me are things that I feel like helps me in my job, not like down to like what did I do, but I learned definitely what takes priority, what's the most important thing. You know, like the little things that I think that I used to worry about and you know get stressed out about, I don't anymore. I think when you've gone through you know, like what I've gone through, like you don't sweat the small stuff. You learn about the things that are most important. And so those are the things, like, so not directly with my career, but I think those are the things that I bring to everything now. Is it's just a different perspective now that I think I bring to everything afterwards.
Right. So, what was your experience like at CureFest in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, so we've gone the last 2 years and we're actually going again this year. So it's the third weekend in September. And I think what I love the most about CureFest is it is everyone is there for the same cause. You know, I think when you're kind of in the midst of it, you can feel very alone or like it's such a small group, you know, that's kind of like fighting for change. And yet, when you go to CureFest and you have all of these people, families with kids who, you know, are fighting cancer, families who have lost, you know, a child, you know, families who, you know, have a survivor. You have doctors, researchers, every nonprofit who helps support, you know, like childhood cancer there. It's it's this amazing feeling of just kind of the power of what you can do together. And so I think one of the most amazing things that we love about CureFest is the march that we do to the Capitol. And so we make signs and banners, and you literally have hundreds of people that march to the Capitol talking about how more funding is needed for childhood cancer research and how the funding that is available is not enough. And so it's, you know, it's just so exciting to be a part of that. And so one of the things that I've loved, you know, probably more so than just for me, is what it does for Maverick. So Maverick has gotten excited about the advocacy piece of it, you know, and being able to feel like he can, you know, fight for a change, right? And push for something that could help someone else. And so, you know, I think there's so many ways that all of us, me, him, my other son, could take this loss with Axel. You know, it's very easy to go into a very deep, dark place. And that's not to say I was not there. I don't know how you could say you could lose a child and not be there at some point. Um, but I think what I have found, you know, and what I've tried to show as an example to my boys is that, you know, it sucks, right? There's no way around it. It sucks that Axel isn't here because he should be. But what are those things that we can do in his honor to remember him, to, you know, fight for the change that should happen, that needs to be here. And so I love that, even though we all have our moments that are really hard when it comes to not having Axel here, that I see in each of my boys and in me, um, their kind of like drive to still make a change and make a difference and to kind of advocate and things like that. So that's what I love most about going. I love to watch Maverick. I love to watch him really get into it, and just feel like something bigger than himself.
I love that. So, how do you honor Axel? And do you want to talk a bit more about what you've been up to with your nonprofit?
Yeah, yeah. So I find I try and honor him in so many ways. I think that is truly what keeps me going. I think the biggest thing right now is starting his nonprofit. So we wanted to kind of stick with the name Axel's Army, as that was really the backbone behind what kept us going. And we wanted to kind of continue that, as we pushed forward. So I spent a lot of time trying to think about those things that were important to me, that really keep Axel's memory alive. And so our nonprofit, is kind of focused on three main pillars. So the one of the biggest ones for sure is funding, childhood cancer research for alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma. So because there's not a lot of funding for childhood cancer in general, and then you add a very rare cancer like arms to it, and it's even less. So that is very, very important to me. Um, One of the other things, is just providing, fun and joy for kids when they're in treatment. So especially for times when they have to be in the hospital, like big times like holidays. And so Axel loved the holidays. He loved his birthday, Christmas, Halloween was a big one, Easter. And so one of the things that we want to do is to really kind of create these really cool, fun experiences on those special days when kids don't want to be in the hospital, but they have to be, just to try and bring, a smile to their face. And as part of that, we really want to include the siblings as well. That's a key part of what I want to accomplish. The siblings, I look at Maverick, Caden was older, and so he was already moved out of the house. So it was a little bit less affecting him. But for Maverick, and not because we didn't want to, but by default, everything was prioritized around Axel. And so, it's hard for siblings because they fall by the wayside, and when they're that age. So Maverick was 6 when Axel was diagnosed. He didn't get it. He just felt like Axel was more important. Axel got more time and attention. And so we want to spend, the time making siblings feel special too, because they do get lost. And that has been one of the hardest things, and it's one of the things that I focus on the most with Maverick right now too, um, um, is all of that. And then the biggest pillar that I'm really excited about, is helping support families, especially moms who have lost a child. So when I lost Axel, in looking for, support, there's not as much out there as maybe I would have hoped to have found. And one of the best things that I did, for myself, was I went on a mom's retreat, with that another nonprofit set up, for moms who have lost a child to cancer. And it was the best thing I have ever done for myself in my healing journey, is being with other moms who know exactly what I had gone through and what I was feeling. And so this is something that's really, really personal to me. Living in Arizona, Sedona was like a sacred haven for me during Axel's journey and after. It was a very spiritual place that provided a lot of healing for me. And so that's where I want to do a mom's retreat, is up in Sedona. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm looking for. We have our first big fundraiser coming up in October for the nonprofit. And so that's one of the biggest things that I am looking for is, the funds to do my first mom's retreat, like April, May next year, I think. And so literally everything with the nonprofit has that little touch of Axel in there, even our first fundraiser. So, I still work full time. And so I have time to probably do one big event a year. And because Axel, he loved to dress up. So he loved superheroes. Every visit, he would dress up as a different superhero to go to the hospital. And like I said, he called his chemo his superhero power juice. And so in being able to do one event, we are doing a masquerade ball, since he loved to dress up. And so I'm super excited. So it's coming up in October, which is also his favorite month. So I'm looking forward to it. So that's one of the biggest things that I would say that I'm doing right now to honor him.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And I love how like each of the pillars has a tie to kind of your experiences.
Yep, for sure.
So could you tell me about Axel the puppy?
Yes. Oh, so it's so funny when people hear that we have a dog named Axel, it kind of causes a lot of people to go, huh. And so, but it truly is the best story. So my son Axel sends me signs all the time, that he's still around and watching out for his mama. So anyway, so this was about 6 weeks after Axel had passed away, and I was out at his grave, and I was driving back home, and there was a detour, so I had to get off the highway that I normally take and take a little side street. And I'm sitting at this light, and I look down, and I see this little cardboard sign that says mini Aussie Doodle puppies for sale. Now, Maverick wanted a puppy at this time, and I was getting ready to enter my super busy work season. And I was like, we are not getting a puppy right now, Maverick. Like, we can look after. But I'm sitting here, and I had told Maverick and Axel that the next dog I wanted was an Australian Shepherd. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what's an Aussie Doodle look like? I bet those are adorable. So I go on to Google and I type in mini Aussie Doodle. Okay. And I'm like looking at the pictures. I'm like, oh, aren't they so cute? Like, again, just looking at the pictures. So I'm scrolling through and I see this very unique looking dog. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I click on the picture, and I'm like, why am I like so drawn to this dog? And I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like a combination of my three most favorite dogs in my lifetime. So growing up, I had a German Shepherd, and her name was Bootsy. I had her for 17 years. And we called her Bootsy because she had little white boots on her paws. And so this dog had four white boots. Okay. And then I was in the Peace Corps in Africa, and I brought a dog home with me that looked just like a little fox with blue eyes. And this dog looked exactly the same with a blue eye. And I was like, oh my gosh, that looks just like Circa. And then we had a German Shepherd who was Axel's favorite dog, named Mako, and beautiful black and tan colors. And this dog was beautiful black and tan with the white. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is crazy that this dog is like a mix of my three most favorite dogs. And I kid you not, I scrolled down, and the name of the dog was Axel, spelled exactly the same way as Axel. And I was like, Okay, if this isn't a sign that we need to get this dog, so even though I was not planning on or not needing a dog at this time, we got the dog, and I said to Maverick, I was like, "You can decide. You can keep the name, or we can change it." And he's like, "Are you kidding, Mom?" He's like, "Axel wants us to have this dog," and so we kept the name. And I will tell you that our puppy Axel has been the best thing for us in our healing. Like literally just keeps us smiling, laughing, on our toes. And so it literally was the perfect sign from Axel that this is what we needed. So yeah, so it's one of my most favorite stories to tell.
I love it. So what's at the top of your list chasing stars with Axel?
Yeah, so one of the things we do, and this is the other big thing that we do to honor Axel. So when he died, Maverick, the hardest thing, Maverick said to me one day, he said, Mom, I think what I miss the most about Axel not being here is we had this list of all these things that we wanted to do, and now we're not going to be able to do them together anymore. And, to hear that that was like the hardest thing for him, right, was like hard for me to hear. And so I was like, all right, well, what if we go and do them? And so we didn't want to call it a bucket list. And so we call it Chasing Stars with Axel. And so we have on this list all of the places that they've wanted to go. And some of them, so some are very small, some are very big. So we've done a mix. Um, they wanted to go, they were big Mario fans. So Super Nintendo World, Legoland. So those are the closest. I mean, and even that was a drive. But one of the biggest ones we did last summer is we went to Japan. So the boys wanted to go to Japan. They love Pokemon and Nintendo, and we went to Universal and we went to Disney, and they loved anime. And so we just have this list. We did a Disney cruise. This summer, we went to Atlantis and the Bahamas. We've got Costa Rica on the list, Hawaii on the list, like another cruise. Like the list is very long. Iceland, all kinds of places that they wanted to go. And so this is something that we do too. And this is a great one. This helps Maverick and I so much because we feel Axel with us. When we're there, we definitely get signs from him. And so, yeah, so our next trip, Maverick wants to go back to Japan. So I'm like, oh, I thought we already did that. We're not crossing that off. And he's like, no, we'll go hit some other places too. So I think Japan is back on the list for next summer.
It sounds so fun.
Yes, yes.
So why have you chosen cc-TDI as a research partner, and what did you take away from your recent visit to the lab?
Yeah, so I learned about cc-TDI from Megan's mission. And so I think when Axel was going through treatment and we were trying to just kind of learn as much as we could about alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma and just treatment options and things like that, we came across Megan's mission. And so we did it was one of the organizations that we picked, like when we would fundraise for certain things, or like when Axel passed away, we didn't want people sending flowers. We were like, hey, pick one of these organizations that, we feel is, the money's going to go to a good place. And so cc-TDI was on that list. And then I knew that I wanted to start a nonprofit, and I knew research was going to be one of the top things on there. And so, I feel overall there's not a lot of places that do, childhood cancer research. But I had loved reading the Megan's Mission stories about TTCDI, and just that there was a focus on the rare cancer that Axel had. And I was like, okay, if I want to raise money that goes exactly to what we didn't get, right? Like I want it to be specifically for arms research. And so I remember I reached out to Dr. Keller, and immediately he wrote. I mean, I feel like I sent the email, and within 5 minutes he had written me back. And I think that's what I have just loved so much is like his communication, his passion for it. And that's what I got too when I came to the lab. um that's what I really got when I came to visit the lab, is just seeing just the drive and the passion, right? Like it's not just a job. It's not just, hey, this is what we get paid to do. Like there was this energy, this, I keep going back to the word passion, but just like this true belief in what you're doing there. And that's really what drew me in, because when I think too about all the things I'm doing to honor Axel and the nonprofit and all of that, like it all stems back to the love and the passion that I have for my kid, And so and I think that drives so many things. And that's what I loved so much, is just, the atmosphere there. And like I said, Dr. Keller has been wonderful to partner with, and just all the ways that, he has offered to help. And so I think when I came to visit, it made it so real. And just seeing the focus that is put on arms that I feel like is so hard to find anywhere, that it just, I didn't even have to question it at all, that that's who I, wanted to partner with.
Right. So, do you think the journey of Axel's foundation will be over if a cure for rhabdomyosarcoma is found?
No, although I do hope that there is a cure one day. So I'm definitely hopeful for that. But no, I think I will always find something that I can do to honor him, even if it were to shift directions a little bit. I would definitely still keep that going in other ways. Trust me, I've thought of like a million different things that I can do. I've got to hold myself back from like all the things that I think about. So
Yeah,
no, so I'd still keep it going even if it had to shift.
right. So that's the end of my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Outside of just say thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share about the
Yeah,
amazing work you're doing.
thank you so much.